As a yoga teacher, I want my students to have a connection with themselves. I want them to have an inward journey where they begin to reflect, they begin to consider themselves, they begin to really listen in on the messages that are coming through. I really want them to have a spiritual experience in whatever capacity that looks like for them as an individual person. But I realized that there was one very common mainstream yoga approach that I was doing, that almost everybody does, that was killing their connection. It was killing their spirituality. And that is adhering to correct alignment. Now, hear me out. Correct alignment is obviously well intended. It is designed to help your students move their bodies in a way that is safe. Yeah? We don't want to mislead or misguide our students. But the very notion of correct alignment does not consider the modern people of today, number one. It does not consider the difference between men and women, number two. And it doesn't consider the difference from person A to person Z and everything else in between and before and after and above and below that. It just does not consider people as individuals. Correct alignment considers people as being the exact same person. Now, you know, as a yoga teacher, that is not true. You have so many different types of people that come to your classes, lots of variety, lots of different needs, lots of different intentions. So when I began to consider this concept that, wow, correct alignment is really killing my students' ability to connect with themselves, I started to change my wording around the way that I would guide people through yoga asana. Now, I would give different suggestions, and then I would see how they would take those suggestions on board. And I would present various options without a bias, that there was no one way to do something. I would say, if you want to position your heels like this, notice how that feels for you. If you want to position your heels like this, notice how that feels for you. And then decide where the value sits. Now, when we get rid of this notion of correct alignment, we really allow our students to step away from the shackles and the confinements that actually prevent them from having a reflective journey through asana. Now, this is totally different than contemplating and reflecting before asana, and then contemplating and reflecting in between some asana sequences, and then contemplating and reflecting at the end of asana. No, this is constant contemplation and reflection throughout, weaved throughout the practice of asana. So I recommend, in order for your students to connect deeper with themselves, because I've seen this play out. I've taught that way. I've taught with the correct alignment. I've been that like super adamant person that was like technique, technique. And I saw the results. There was injury. There was a short shelf life on people's yoga practice, and there was just a disconnect within the way they approach their practice. When I shifted over to letting go of adhering to correct alignment and instead got people to explore asana, to discover asana, to really play and be curious about asana, to find the right way for them, the correct way for them on that day, in that moment, during that pose, there was a massive shift that I saw. And not only did I see that shift, but I also got feedback from students on that they started to notice how this was playing out not only on their yoga mats, but in their life as well. It was this deep consideration of, am I just doing something because that's what someone has told me to do, versus, well, wait a minute, is that the right thing for me? You know, we spend enough of our lives, enough time, enough hours catering to the needs of other people. So don't just use the time on the mat 10 minutes before you do asana, 5 minutes at the end of asana, or whatever that is, to deeply reflect and consider yourself. No, we want our students to consider themselves and connect with themselves and have that spiritual journey throughout asana as well. And I found personally this was one of the most impactful ways to do that, to encourage my students to connect with themselves, was to get rid of the whole notion of correct alignment.